Have you ever wondered, must old age be a prison of fear? When friends grow distant, when the body slows, does loneliness become our only companion? Society whispers a cruel lie, that aging is a curse, that solitude is a barren wasteland. But what if I told you that loneliness is not the enemy? What if it is, in fact, the greatest teacher you'll ever meet? For decades, I walked the path of attachment, clinging to relationships, chasing validation, fearing abandonment. Like a leaf tossed in the wind, I believed my worth depended on how many hands held mine. But the Buddha's wisdom struck me like thunder. Sab sakra nikka. All conditioned things are impermanent. Friends come and go, bodies age. Even the self we cling to is an illusion, a mirage shaped by craving. Yet here is the paradox. When we stop fighting impermanence, when we release our grip on what cannot last, we discover a freedom older than time itself. Solitude, in its purest form, is not emptiness. It is the sacred space where the mind stops begging for approval and finally rests in its radiance. Think of the lotus, rooted in mud, yet untouched by it. Similarly, aging need not trap us in the mud of societal expectations. It can be the very water that nurtures our bloom. The world mistakes loneliness for aloneness. Loneliness is a wound, a craving for what is absent. Aloneness is wholeness, a return to the truth that we are already complete. The Buddha sat alone beneath the Bodhi tree, not because he despised humanity, but because he knew enlightenment flowers only when we cease to seek outside ourselves. Old age is not a sentence to isolation. It is an invitation to shed the masks we've worn for lifetimes, to stop performing for applause that never truly fills us. When the chatter fades, what remains? The breath, the heartbeat, the unshakable awareness that you are here, alive, enough. This is the gift of aging, permission to stop chasing and start being. But do not mistake this for passivity. To sit with solitude is to engage in the most profound act of rebellion against a culture that equates value with productivity, against a mind addicted to distraction. It is here, in the quiet, that we confront our deepest fears and find they were never real to begin with. So I ask you, what if the very thing you fear, being alone, is the doorway to liberation? What if aging is not an ending, but a homecoming? I once believed happiness was a crowded room, laughter echoing, glasses clinking, endless faces smiling at me. In my 20s, I wore life like a glittering costume. Parties, promotions, people. I collected them all, desperate to fill a hollow space inside me I couldn't name. I'd stand in rooms buzzing with chatter, my mind screaming, do they like me? Am I enough? Yet the louder the world became, the quieter my soul grew. There's a memory that haunts me, my 30th birthday. A rooftop filled with friends, fairy lights strung like stars. Everyone sang, but I felt nothing. I smiled until my cheeks ached, counting the minutes until I could escape. That night, I stared at the mirror and whispered, "Who are you?" The reflection had no answer. For years, I ran from silence, from stillness, from myself. I confused busyness for purpose, popularity for love. Buddhism teaches that ignorance, avijja, chains us to suffering. I was the perfect prisoner, shackled to approval, blind to the truth. No amount of noise could silence the ache of a heart that didn't know itself. Then, at 55, life cracked me open. A diagnosis, a quiet hospital room. The doctor's words, slow down. But how? Slowing down meant facing the void I'd spent decades running from. The first night home, I sat alone on my porch. No phone, no music, just the hum of cicadas and the weight of my breath. Tears fell, not from fear of death, but from regret. I'd lived a life that wasn't mine. That's when I remembered a lesson from my teacher decades prior. The Buddha didn't find enlightenment in a crowd. He found it under a tree, alone. So I began to sit, not meditating at first, just sitting, letting the storm inside rage until it exhausted itself. And slowly, something shifted. In the silence, I met her, the girl I'd abandoned. The one who loved painting but became a lawyer to impress her parents. The one who craved quiet mornings but threw parties to prove she was fun. She was still there, buried under layers of pretense, whispering, "Let me breathe." Aging became my Bodhi tree. As my hair turned silver, I stopped dyeing it. As my friends drifted, I stopped chasing. I traded crowded cafes for a weathered journal, traded small talk for the symphony of rain on my window. At 70, I sit here now, not with loneliness, but with a love I never imagined, a love affair with my existence. People ask, "Don't you miss your old life?" I smile. The old life was a performance. The applause faded, but the stage was never real. What's real is this: the way sunlight spills across my book at dawn, the way my hands, wrinkled and spotted, still tremble with gratitude when I touch soil in my garden. The way silence no longer terrifies me. It hums with the music of being. Buddhism speaks of dukkha, suffering born of craving. For me, dukkha was the lie that I needed others to complete me. Letting go wasn't a loss, it was liberation. When I released the need to be seen, I became visible to myself. When I stopped begging for love, I found it flowing from my own heart like an eternal spring. There's a story in the Pali Canon about a monk who asked the Buddha, "How can I find peace?" The Buddha replied, "Go to the forest. Sit. Listen. The trees will teach you." I've come to understand, the forest isn't a place. It's the courage to face your inner wilderness, the tangled fears, the buried dreams, and say, "I will no longer abandon you." My younger self would pity this lonely old woman. But she doesn't see what I see. That solitude is where the divine whispers. That wrinkles are maps of a life finally lived authentically. That every morning, when I light incense and bow to the Buddha on my altar, I'm also bowing to the Buddha within me, the one who needed 70 years to stop searching and start seeing. This is the alchemy of aging. Time strips away everything that isn't you. Friends leave, roles fade, the body rebels. But what remains? The essence, the awareness that watched you laugh, cry, and pretend. The one who never left, even when you tried to escape. So to anyone afraid of growing old, I say this: don't fear the solitude. Fear the life you'll miss by clinging to what's fleeting. The greatest gift of age isn't wisdom. It's the audacity to be ordinary. To find sacredness in a cup of tea. To let your heart beat in rhythm with the universe, unapologetically, unadorned. I'm 70. I sit by this window, not waiting for visitors, but welcoming myself home. And for the first time, I'm truly alive. Let me ask you plainly, what is true freedom? Is it the applause of 100 friends who know your name, but not your soul? Or the quiet certainty of being seen, truly seen by even one? Picture this: a cafe buzzing with retirees, swapping stories of grandchildren and aches. Laughter rings, but how many here are heard? Contrast this with the man by the lake, alone, brush in hand, translating the sunset into strokes of color. No audience, no chatter, just the dialogue between his heart and the horizon. Buddhism doesn't condemn connection. It cautions against clinging to numbers, to validation, to the illusion that companionship alone can save us. The Buddha taught, yada nikka ta dukkha, whatever is impermanent is suffering. Friendships fade. Social media likes evaporate. Even the self we perform for others is a flickering shadow. So I challenge you. Is your fear of solitude a fear of truth? Of sitting with the parts of yourself you've hidden beneath a lifetime of hello? How are you? And let's meet soon. The freedom we crave isn't found in crowds or caves. It's found in the courage to ask, who am I when no one is watching? The old painter knows this. His canvas holds no lies. Each stroke is a confession, a prayer, a reckoning. He doesn't need followers. He's too busy following the whispers of his spirit. This is the freedom the Buddha spoke of, not the absence of people, but the absence of need. When you no longer grasp for approval, every interaction becomes a choice, not a chain. Yet society labels the solitary as lonely, the social as fulfilled. How ironic. The Buddha abandoned his palace to sit alone, not because he hated people, but because he loved truth more. His enlightenment wasn't a group project. It was an intimate dance between one mind and eternity. So I ask again, what does freedom look like to you? Is it the weight of 100 friends who vanish when the Wi-Fi dies? Or the lightness of a single breath, unhurried, unjudged, unfiltered? The answer isn't in these words. It's in the space between them, the pause where your heart whispers, I am tired of performing. Let me rest. Freedom isn't a destination. It's the audacity to stop chasing and let life find you, exactly as you are. Freedom, as we've seen, isn't about numbers. It's about depth. And depth begins not with others, but within. Let's journey deeper into the heart of Buddhist wisdom, where solitude becomes strength and connection becomes art. Imagine the Buddha, 2,600 years ago, walking alone through a dense forest. No disciples, no crowds, just the rustle of leaves and the weight of his quest. He wasn't running from humanity. He was walking toward a truth we often forget. We are our sanctuary. The Buddha taught Atta Hayatano Natho, you are your refuge. This isn't a rejection of community. It's a radical invitation to stop outsourcing your worth, your peace, your answers. Self-reliance isn't isolation. It's the courage to sit with your shadows until they reveal their light. Think of the old painter from our story. His freedom didn't come from resisting loneliness. It came from realizing, I am the canvas. I am the brush. I am the art. When we stop begging the world to complete us, we become whole, not through addition, but subtraction. Strip away the noise, and what's left? The breath, the heartbeat, the unshakable I am. Yet self-reliance isn't selfishness. The Buddha returned from the forest to teach for 45 years. But here's the secret. His teachings flowed from a cup that was already full. You can't pour from an empty vessel. To love others deeply, you must first befriend yourself. Now, let's return to our two elders, one laughing in a crowd, the other painting in silence. Which is richer? Buddhism answers, neither. Because true wealth isn't in numbers or solitude, it's in authenticity. Look closely at the couple holding hands. Their skin is mapped with wrinkles, each line a story, each scar a silent vow. They don't speak much. They don't need to. After 50 years, their touch says, I see your storms. I honor your seasons. This is the essence of right relationship in Buddhism. Connections that don't cling, but liberate. The Buddha never said, have no friends. He warned against kalyamatata, bad friendships. Not evil people, but relationships that keep you small, that mirror your fears instead of your potential. Contrast this with the Zen saying, when drinking tea, just drink tea. When loving, just love. No agendas, no masks. The old painter knows this. His art isn't for galleries, it's a dialogue with the divine. Similarly, the couple's silence isn't emptiness. It's the fullness of two souls who've stopped performing. In a world obsessed with more, Buddhism whispers, enough is a feast. Now, meet the grandfather. His legacy isn't in a bank vault, it's in the wide-eyed child on his lap. As he whispers tales of resilience, he isn't just sharing memories. He's passing the torch of Dhamma, the truth that outlives flesh and bone. In the Daya Nikaya, the Buddha says, Apamda Passasanti, the wise praise diligence. But what is diligence here? Not hustle, not accumulation. It's the act of polishing your inner mirror so clearly that others see their light reflected. The grandfather's hands tremble as he speaks. Not from weakness, from reverence. Each word is a pebble dropped into the pond of his granddaughter's consciousness. Ripples upon ripples. He knows, wisdom isn't taught. It's caught. This is the paradox of aging. The body weakens, but the spirit expands. The world dismisses the elderly as outdated. Yet Buddhism reveres them as asterisk theras, elders whose wrinkles are libraries, whose silence is scripture. Your legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you awaken in others. The painter, the couple, the grandfather, their paths seem separate, yet they converge here, at the heart of Buddhism's greatest teaching, the art of being present. Let's dissolve the illusion of separation and witness how their stories weave into a single truth. Do you hear it? That faint whisper beneath the noise of shoulds and what-ifs. It's your heart, tired of running, pleading, let me rest. The painter hears it. His brush pauses mid-stroke as a sparrow lands on his windowsill. For decades, he'd have missed this, too busy chasing fame. Now he sees. The bird's tilted head, the way sunlight gilds its wings. This is his masterpiece. Not the painting, but the seeing. Buddhism calls this yathdasana, knowing things as they are, not as we wish them to be. The couple hears it. Their hands, once clasped to fill silence, now rest open, palms upturned like lotus petals. No need to speak. The clock ticks. Tea cools. A lifetime of roles, wife, husband, provider, caregiver, falls away. What remains? two beings, breathing. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh said, "The present moment is the only moment available to us." They finally arrived. The grandfather hears it. His granddaughter, once fidgeting through his stories, now sits still, her small hand in his weathered one. He's not recounting the past, he's planting seeds. "Remember this," his silence says. "When I'm gone, find me here, in the space between your breaths." In Pali, this is anasati, recollection of truth. The truth that love outlives memory. You, yes, you, are invited into this symphony. Close your eyes. Feel the weight of your body on the chair. The air is moving through your nostrils. The hum of existence you've labeled silence. This isn't emptiness. This is plenitude. The Buddha didn't sit beneath the Bodhi tree to escape life. He sat to embrace it, fully, fiercely, without filters. But we've been taught to fear stillness, to equate solitude with scarcity. Watch the painter again, alone, yet alive with the company of his attention. His solitude isn't a lack of people, it's an abundance of presence. The couple's quiet isn't awkward, it's sacred. The grandfather's pauses aren't forgetfulness, they're Dharma doors, inviting his granddaughter to step into her wisdom. Here's the revelation. What you've been seeking, love, peace, belonging, has always been here. In the mundane, the unremarkable, the ordinary moments we rush through. The Buddha's enlightenment wasn't a lightning bolt. It was the cumulative power of noticing this breath, this step, this heartbeat. The painter's hands tremble, not with age, but awe, as he mixes colors for the sparrow's portrait. The couple's laughter bubbles up, unplanned, over a burnt cookie. The granddaughter, without prompting, leans her head on her grandfather's shoulder. No cameras, no audience, just life, raw and radiant. This is the heart of dukkha's end, stopping the chase. The Buddha taught that suffering isn't in pain itself, but in our resistance to what is. The wrinkles, the quiet, the fading roles, they're not enemies. They're mentors, guiding us home to the truth. You are already whole. The painter's brush, the couple's silence, the grandfather's stories, they're not endings. They're doorways. And now, it's your turn to cross the threshold. Aging isn't a full stop. It's an ellipsis, a pause where life whispers, "Come home to yourself." For decades, you've worn masks, parent, professional, pleaser. But beneath those roles, something timeless remains. The you untouched by time, unshaken by praise or blame. The Buddha called this Pabhasarasiddha, the radiant mind. So here's your invitation. Power off the screens. Sit, breathe, ask the question that terrifies and liberates. Who would I be if no one was watching? Not the you shaped by resumes or relationships, but the you that existed before the world named you. The you that dances in rainstorms, marvels at fireflies, and weeps at beauty for no reason. The grandfather's hands, the painter's solitude, the couple's quiet, they're mirrors. They reflect a truth we've forgotten. You are already free. Not when you retire, not when you're ready, but now. Aging strips away everything non-essential, leaving only the raw, radiant core the Buddha termed ta, suchness. But don't take my word for it. Test it. Today, sit for 5 minutes. No goals, no mantras. Just you and the breath you've ignored for a lifetime. If a thought arises, greet it. Ah, there's fear. There's longing. Then let it pass like autumn leaves on a river. What remains? The space, the stillness, the you that's always been here. If this message has stirred something in you, a longing, a recognition, don't let it fade. Share it with a parent who fears becoming useless, a friend drowning in busyness. And if you're ready to walk this path deeper, subscribe. Not for more videos, but for a community remembering one truth. We don't need audiences to shine. We are the light.